Hey everyone, it's VT Maddie. The VOD that you're watching here is edited from the stream over at twitch.tv/VoltaicAim. That's right, VOD review streams are back, once every month, over at the official Voltaic Twitch channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video, which is edited down to show you the most informative and detailed VOD reviews from the latest stream. Thank you for watching.
Not my best run, I'll admit. I just went at it for 2 hours earlier and it was my break. Just want to hit GM on this scenario. So this is 27 CM on a rated mid. Right.
Isn't that your exact config?
For
Jason?
Aether, I run like
Yeah.
28. Actually, I'll have to look. I think Aether is
I think your PB was 27. I might be misremembering.
27, 26, 28. It's you gotta run like super high sense for that, so it is a good choice. Let's see.
I'm noticing a pattern I see on ground scenarios a lot, where they will correct and then stop and then follow through. It's not like this smooth, continuous motion, and I think it's leading to a bit of score loss on this bot. But the reactions themselves look okay to me. It's just stopping after, not following through.
Yeah, even if I slow it down, we're seeing that what you're doing is you're still really fast, but it's exactly what you were saying. It's very segmented. You'll react within the right amount of speed, but then you'll start it after a certain amount of time has passed, and it'll look like it's its own motion instead of one fluid transition into a micro adjustment. So partly what I like to say with this is, especially on this sensitivity, I like to say that you want to transition most of that tension into your wrist so that you can make it a tighter motion. Because if you're using a lot of arm, for example, on this bot, it's going to look really wide, and that kind of angle that you're aiming at is just going to be really wide. So try to get some more wrist movement on this bot, and even when it gets a little bit more vertical, you can integrate fingertips as well. Especially at the sends that you're running, you should be able to do that pretty easily.
Is it worth pulling up a top Aether VOD here to kind of show the continuity of movement on bot 1 compared to this?
Okay. Bot 1 is the most confusing out of the Aether bots, so worth looking at.
He makes the correction and then he follows that correction with a movement of the same speed.
You slow it down to 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the right idea. You have the speed, but you just don't have that seamless transition, that fluidity. And I imagine
This segment is a great example.
I imagine he's probably you might think that because this is such a wide bot, he's using a lot of arm, but from this motion alone, I feel like it's mostly a wrist pivot, even though he doesn't have a hand cam. The deal with bot 1, and then a lot of people get confused by this as well, at this sensitivity, this is such an easy fingertip bot. And you need to not really get tripped up whenever the bot enters a horizontal deviation, because this bot has a very circular type of pattern. Think Air Voltaic 4 or Air Angelic 4, where the bot is entering this very tight horizontal pattern of short strafes. This is just that, but flipped on its sides so that it's vertical. And that's how you kind of want to be reading this. So that's what you have to expect. And because it's such a tight vertical range, you can do all of this motion with your fingertips. And you don't need really wide wrist pivots for this. I want to see how Buck does this one for a second.
He stays I don't know, when it is making those circular movements, he's really smooth, and he only deviates to more snappy motions when it kind of exits that circular cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right at 41
there.
seconds here.
I think controlling when you utilize tension is really important here, both for overall scenario endurance, but also score maxing on this bot.
And on here, you
don't
could
want to
keep
be
two
using
modes, right?
Yeah.
Mode 1 being, mostly just fingertip, calm modes, and then whenever it jumps, it's kind of like Controlsphere. Okay, bot 3. Bot 3 is also like the most complicated one for me. I don't have much practice on it. You could play the bot 3 only version.
Seems to be suffering from like overuse of tension here.
Definitely, and I think I saw a moment. Okay, the bot will enter a longer strafe, and I think you need to acknowledge that you can't just drop yourself out of that strafe early because you're trying to anticipate like the next, jump. You got to commit to strafes fully, and I think that you're kind of afraid to cross over the bot and like really leave the other side of it or be on the following edge for too long. So commit to the strafe. Like don't try to predict the next jump, or don't try to like set up for a micro correction early, because I just saw in this strafe, we like stopped tracking it around here, and the bot continued that direction. And I know that it is possible to like kind of edge track this bot, but it's dangerous because this makes you lose so much score. And if you're running this on high tension, it's even more dangerous. Do you think he maybe ran out of space? Maybe hit a wall.
I was wondering about muscle group engagement, like if that's the end of their like wrist range of motion,
Right.
and then they have to like shakily follow through or reset or something. It's hard to say if that's like a mental prediction or like a physical space issue.
Judging by where the bot came from, I want to say it it could have been a mental thing, because I don't imagine that based on where the spawn is.
Yeah, they were coming from like there.
They're coming up from up here. Bot went left. It's probably a mental thing. I wanted to point that out. But yeah, definitely pay attention to tension management overall. So we like these gaunt listeners because it gives us a lot to talk about. Bot 1, I think I want to say like more
continuity
tension.
of movement.
Yeah, tension in wrist rather than arm, and then fluidity for specifically like continuity and motion.
I think that will like, I don't know, single-handedly elevate this person's bot 1. Like if they can smooth out that transition from like making that correction to like following the motion, you will be able to farm like so much more score, even if you're slower on your corrections because of it. Like it's very worth it.
Fingertip for bot 2, more fingertip usage. And what did you say about like reading the between
reading the bot's like state, I guess. Like it alternates between like those circular movements and then like very sporadic deviations. You want to hold low tension while it's in those circular motions, and basically only tense your fingers and use your fingers for those movements exclusively. And then when it springs up, I like to do that with my wrist, so more tension in wrist and then a very snappy correction to kind of get back onto it until it, returns to those circular strafes.
God, it's so good like having my thoughts more read out so I can just write it. And I'm matching the speed because I can write with mouse. Bot 3.
How can you do that so well, by the way?
I don't know. I had a coach who was able to do this in VOD reviews in Overwatch, and I guess I'm mimicking it. Honestly, for bot 3, it is mostly the prediction thing that I was talking about, or stopping early, so like committing to strafes. And a lot of the principles in bot 1 for reading could be transferred over to bot 3, because I did see some like early stopping on bot 1 as well. But mainly for this one, it's also just like prediction committing and also managing your tension, because we saw that by bot 3 you were entering a little bit of a lockout state in terms of the shakiness. So that's a good
And
bot.
I think a lot of bot 3 improvement will come from like lowering tension on bot 2.
Yeah, exactly. Like that stuff, it'll compound over. If you have high tension bot 2, just move over to bot 3, and by that point you'll be out.
So the big thing here is the same thing. It's like continuity of movement. This is tracking comprised of a bunch of smaller micro adjustments instead of like one fluid motion. And this is 32, right? So it's kind of hard to pinpoint the cause of this because there are a few. I think part of this could be muscle group utilization. It's what it was for me back when I had this issue. A part of it could be reading. Like you're not actively reading the bot's position well enough, partially because of the, you know, disconnected tracking movements. But the corrections look very solid to me, actually.
They do. It is looking similar. I think I'm seeing a little bit of what we saw in the previous person's bot 3. I feel like what's happening here is they look like they're committing to one singular motion or one kind of motion with like maybe their wrist, and they're just like following that motion all the way through.
That's what I was thinking too.
And
then
not
when they run out of like,
yeah, exactly. So when they run out of that, they're not moving to another muscle group to support. So right around here, first of all,
yeah,
with edge tracking is a risky thing. It's hard to do it like properly. So you want to make sure that like if your edge tracking looks like this, make sure you're trying to adjust yourself to be more center mass. Because like even though we know that edge tracking is good and all, if you can't execute it properly, it's not worth doing because you'll just lose score as a result of, you know, falling off the edge. The second thing here is what we're seeing is you'll start a motion mostly with your wrist and the tension is focused in your wrist, but then when you run out of pivot room, because this is like a wider sort of bot, you're not shifting that tension up back into your forearm to support the rest of that motion. So, and honestly, by the way, chat, if you haven't sent in a VOD yet, hand cams would be very, very good to kind of visualize like space movement.
I was thinking for when I do coaching that I'm going to make hand cams like mandatory almost, because yeah, it's so helpful.
So basically, if we were to see a hand cam, the wrist pivots are going to be angled sort of in this direction. So you can picture that as the mouse and it's going to be moving that direction. And at some point here, you reach like a point where that becomes uncomfortable and you can no longer keep up that smooth motion with your wrist because that's an ulnar deviation outwards. Unless you're freaking left-handed, in which case, like, you're talented. That's an ulnar deviation outwards. That's going to be harder for you to control that pivot. So by that point, you need to be transitioning tension from wrist into forearm motion. And that transition is what we're talking about as being segmented.
I've put my Air Nuns bot 2 in the chat if you want to show that, because that should kind of demonstrate with the hand cam that continuity. It's on like Twitch chat, so.
Now this isn't moving as fast, but
I can't remember how tense I was on bot 5. You can skip to it if you want.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, 6, sorry. I think you can still see the like initial correction, and then like my arm starts being engaged more as I follow through.
Yeah, this left movement right here. So you can kind of flip it. The one in the VOD is the right movement. This is towards the left. I can literally see the exact point. Like it was right here. Even if I go frame by frame, but I don't need to. It was right around here where you ran out of like, you know, the comfortable angle of your wrist. You swap to forearm for the rest of this, or not fully to forearm, but like you can have your forearm support the rest of the motion. Like the initial motion was started with the wrist, which is how you want to be doing it because it's like a narrow micro correction. And then the rest of it, once you run out of pivot space, it's helped by the forearm. That's kind of.
And you kind of need to know going into these things that you can't follow this like all the way through with your wrist. Like you need to know that you will need to engage your forearm at some point, and it's better to do it earlier in your wrist movement rather than like fully extending your wrist to the left and then moving your forearm, because then you end up with your wrist stuck in this like horrible, you know, angle. It's better to just move your wrist a little and then engage both to continue the movement.
Most tough one. You don't move on bot 7, and that's kind of bold. We're not giving cheese
I think
advice.
People develop like the stopping tech because it's working quite well here, because the bot remains stationary, so those disconnected movements actually like kind of farming accuracy when it stops.
Kind of like Clover on Ground Plaza.
Was there anything that helped you specifically with like working on blending different muscle groups together, or?
I mean, most of it comes down to playing gauntlet scenarios like this and just paying attention to like where your muscles are activating, like which muscle group you're activating the most. And when you're mixing between the two, I mean, obviously, one, you want to play on like a sensitivity that's like gonna let you most use all of the groups. So don't play a scenario that's gonna force you onto like a 46 cm where you're gonna only be using wrist and arm. Like the way I like to do it on, and especially on scenarios like Air Nuns, is I'll play like 29, 30 cm, like those high, almost mid-range stuff, even though that's mostly high. And I'll like designate certain bots for use for certain muscle groups, and that's how I'll practice. So like Air Voltaic Easy is the big one that I give to people when I'm trying to like play with low tension and like use all the muscle
That one
groups.
was really helpful for me too. If I can suggest something different though, I had a similar issue for quite a while. And what it was for me is that my wrist stability was so much better than my arms that it never made sense to use my arm, right? Because I would just drop accuracy no matter what. I had to actually go and work on my arm stability and my arm smoothness to engage my arm properly. It wasn't like a mechanical disconnect between the two. It was a mental dissuasion from wanting to use my arm because I knew it wasn't as good. So that could be a factor here too. Not wanting to use anything but your wrist because you don't have that control yet with your arm. So that's something to keep in mind too. It might not be a raw muscle group blending issue. It could be something with arm stability itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a bit about like, okay, so let's go Sinai chat. We've been dealing with like some eye garbage, some eye problems. So you have like really bad astigmatism, right?
Yeah, and general eyesight too, but
and with
astigmatism.
me, it's like eye fatigue, and also like I think I have one eye that turns in on itself. So that reminds me of like a thing I was reading about. If you have like a lazy eye, like what do? You patch your good eye and then you work on strengthening the lazy eye. What if you transition that concept over into scenarios like this? What do you do if you have a lazy muscle group that you're subconsciously avoiding usage of? For example, with me, I would
make it work.
Yeah, for example, with me, I would mostly be playing with my arm because I started as a static clicking player. To get into tracking, what I had to do was I had to say to myself, okay, I'm going to force myself to run 30 cm on these air scenarios. I'm going to learn how Clover does it, and I'm just going to strengthen those lazy muscle groups so that my brain wants to use them more. And then look what happens now. I get 900 air nuts.
I had that realization from thinking about like, where does my skill set differ from Clover? I am within, like the same realm of his air scores. He's better, obviously, but it's not like the Grand Canyon gap. But on like Smoothbot, on Smoothsphere, on PGTI, and any of those, he would like destroy me. So it's like, okay, what's the difference? It was arm engagement,
So it's definitely, I don't want to say brute forcing it, but at least like pushing yourself in the direction of, experimenting, exploring what usage of those muscle groups are. Alright, so the last thing on this VOD is bot 8. Bot 7 I don't really have too many comments with. The same problems that we see on bot 5 with segmentation are still going to show up across all these bots. To help with bot 8 the most, obviously, like, you could play the Invincible version, spam that a bunch, because this is a very reading heavy bot, and what that means is that the Excel is going to try to trip you up a little bit. This Excel is very bouncy, so sometimes it'll look like the bot just stops and just halts itself after a strafe, and then the Excel will speed up again. It kind of looks like that, even though it's not instant acceleration. Some general advice on how to approach this, like, something I've noticed is that, like, you can halt yourself to follow that motion after a strafe, and what that means is just completely stop your own motion and already be ready to, not even correct, but like, be ready for the next part of the strafe. That's kind of how I treat Controlsphere. you can kind of see this as a really fast Controlsphere version. But the way you're doing it is you're playing it almost like a pure reactive scenario where you're constantly jumping and you're already beginning your next marker correction like it's a flick. So slow down and try to play this in a sense where when you micro, it's not supposed to be a flick, and it's not supposed to look anything like a flick, even though it's moving fast.
I think a slower version of that bot would be very beneficial for this person. I think letting you kind of see how it moves and see how you should try to move to match its movements with more clarity will really help, because it feels like right now, yeah, you are resorting to purely reacting instead of reading.
The mirror of this is...
And I think Air Invincible 80% is also quite good.
Alright, VT Controlsphere Advanced.
Oh dear god.
Yeah, we have some reps about this these days. Let's see what we
This
can
is
do.
probably the worst experience I've had on like a bench scenario. I don't know.
We call this tornado bots. So when it just deviates from the spawn so much, and it has such wide swings.
This is a good run though.
I think I'm seeing a little bit of you have a good read on the bot. Like you're following it and you're reacting to the strafes like very closely. I just think that the execution of like the micro whenever you return to the bot is shaky and like not as good. You could watch a few Leica VODs for that kind of thing. I think he's really good at that transition. Yeah. You react and you read fine, but we can see like these tiny little jumps. You shake quite a bit. I don't know what sends you're running. Also, I struggle with this angle, the hand cam angle, to really see the fingertip motion. I did see a little bit from your middle finger, so you probably are using a good amount for that jump. Let me play it one more time. It's hard to see, but I think what I see is a hasty like wrist-driven motion for that micro, and I think that might be a little bit dangerous, especially on a scenario like this, because you crossed up and you crossed over the target when you did that.
I think in terms of score, just a bit more stability on the long strafes and you're there for Astro.
Yeah.
To answer your question in chat, I feel like your reading is already good enough.
On the Controlsphere VOD, and this is Astro. So the person who was watching the previous VOD can take a look at this. You got a little bit of a comparison.
And the biggest difference I'm seeing, I think, is that Monarchs can more often like farm a full like wide strafe, and seems to be better at recognizing when this strafe is about to stop, if that makes sense. I think she's getting a lot more score at the very end of strafes.
Now what we saw from the previous VOD, you can even see right there is like, you can be ready to, let me slow this down a lot. Good example. So we can see clearly here, the first difference that we notice is when this bot began to strafe, the pink arrow is Monarch's, and the previous person's arrow, you had like a lot more shakiness getting into this motion. That is what we meant by the execution. You had a good read, but the execution of the actual smooth tracking wasn't seamless, and it wasn't like good. But with Monarchs, it's very smooth. And here, when we talk about knowing when the bot is going to end its strafe, it means she has a very like, she's paying close attention to the XL. So you can see she begins the motion around here, and around this point, you can see a small halt. Like she stops her motion a little bit. But then when she reads that the acceleration isn't actually ending, she continues. That's the kind of like perception that you need for like really high level scores. See right there? She like fell behind a little bit, but the bot kept going. A little bit of a misread, but still, it's better than having turned around that entire way.
I think advice for this VOD is like, it seems like your tension management somewhat like degrades over the course of the run. I feel like there are a bit more high tension movements here, a bit more, you know, unnecessary jitters at the end of the run compared to the beginning. You see what I mean, right? Like, this is very, very smooth follow throughs.
I mean, you can look at the SVM at the start and then see it
Yeah,
degrade over
true.
time.
And I feel like ironing that out and holding that kind of smoothness throughout the scenario, if you want to push the score higher, like that's what you'd need to do. In terms of technique,
I
this is
think
tough.
I'm seeing.
What do you think about the corrections?
Okay, so alluding to like what you just said, at the start, when you're not using like a lot of tension and it looks stable, you have most of your corrections are horizontal, and that's not just because of the bot, because the bot is still making its same vertical motions, but you're keeping everything kind of level, I'd say. But at the end, your corrections start to deviate vertically, and not really like it's not really supposed to. Like the bot isn't giving you an indication that it's moving that much vertically. So I think you might be compensating for that lower tension by either moving it into your arm or your fingertips a little bit too much. So overall tension, like if I were to just, you know, graph it, time, tension, like it's looking like this. Or like how much tension you have left to give in a certain muscle group, this being your wrist. You want to level this out more. So keep it more like the pink arrow and have it just only have jumps whenever the bot is misbehaving.
Which is annoyingly often on this scenario,
Yep.
but you know.
But you don't want to be down here, because if you're that low, you're gonna have to like transition into different muscle groups. So I see those little tiny vertical deviations. That's what's causing you to lose so much SPM by the end, whereas you paced for 4K when you were looking stronger.
I always like seeing this scenario. The classic.
I
feel
I
this
like the
person's
reload
suffering from
version.
the same thing where they don't like push themselves to leave the target or confirm that like. Oh, can I go on a tangent?
Sure.
This to me looks like following the static steps as they're written, which is, you know, flick, micro, confirm, when realistically your micro is your confirm. You don't need to like take that extra time post micro to confirm, if that makes any sense at all. Like, I feel like they're spending a bit too much time on each target. They're kind of lingering both before and after clicking.
The general, like, the Bardoz framework for static that we like to use, it generally splits into these 3 steps. But I like how you're like, it's like by the book Bardoz method, where it's like they kind of split it into exactly those steps, and it's like you can very clearly see when they begin the micro and then they confirm. And I remember you told me, like, in practice, like at the high level, what we're really doing is when we land the flick, that's when we confirm. Like we're basically combining the confirmation of the micro. We're saying, hey, are we on target or are we not? And if we're not on target, then we micro, and if we're on target, then we click. So this portion right here, as well as when you move on to your next flick, this is fluidity. And this is like the new definitions that we're applying after watching what Xianlo does and after watching what Jasper's doing right now. This is the new definition of, or how we apply the Bardoz method with seamless movements. Is that what you're talking about?
I was thinking more like, yeah, like you flick and then you check if you're on target and then you either micro or you click. You don't like flick, then check, then micro, then check, then click, you know?
It's not
and
skipping
I feel like that's what's
steps.
causing this like pausing on target.
It's not skipping steps, it's just making like the decision boundaries between the steps like obscured and like not very visible, because when you make it visible it wastes time. And what we can see here is
I
like,
do also think that the confirm comes before the micro.
yeah,
And you
that's
can have
another
a look
thing
at like, I'm gonna link Bardos's VOD from today. Because he's like 17 here. 17,
oh
40.
wow, wait a minute.
Yeah. The end of this VOD is crazy. But do you see what I mean? Where he makes his initial movement, he checks if he's on target, and then he either clicks or micros and then clicks. There's no like micro then confirming.
The way we have to look at it nowadays is those 3 steps, like those are that's what's happening with your technique in static. But it's not, you don't have to take it in 1, 2, 3. It can be like 1, 2, and then like 2 and 3 are basically within the same sort of step in terms of.
They all need to happen, but
decisions.
yeah, I don't think playing it strictly in the order that it's laid out in is the way to go.
Also, this is just, I hate the
It's
scenario
crazy,
because
right? The end of this VOD is so good.
I hate the scenario because he was at 1820 and then 1 miss kills it, and then back down to 1800. That's why I like the reload version. Where, like, look, you're at 1400 score, but you end the VOD with, I forget what accuracy Bardoz had, but you definitely end the VOD with higher accuracy than Bardoz. But what this tells me is you're only able to pace maximum like 1450 in score or something, because that's all the shots that you're taking. So by reducing the time between those decision boundaries of the steps of the Bardoz method, you can like save way more time, and you can have more. You can use that time to like, you know, increase your pacing and like take more shots. Just gives you more opportunities.
They say in chat, I have no trust that I'm on target if I don't get another glimpse of it. How do I overcome that? That's what the first check is for. Like, you make your flick, you check if you're on target, then you micro. If you don't trust your micros, then you need to, you know, work on those micros. But this delay is adding like so much, you know, discontinuity in your movements. It's like lowering your pace by a lot. You don't want to be pausing on the target like that, and you don't have to.
And you don't have to check
Yeah.
after you micro again.
This flowchart is how I think of it too.
And if you want to make perception easier, I don't know if we're like at the level for this introduction, but any technique knowledge works. With hold detention, start your flick with a burst detention, but then start to let go of it earlier. So notice how I drew this. You can let go of that before you reach the target, and that will really help you with perception, because if you just drop all that tension right as you reach the target, it'll look like you just like teleported, and you'll see just nothing but a blur when you reach the target. Because like Lucan doesn't even have it.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair,
Steven.
Lucan doesn't play, but still, you'd expect Lucan to have his BTS score. Oh, okay. Same thing with static. Here's how I like to... If you leave a target at 1 in TS, here's how I like to deal with this. I will say that it's more time efficient if you just moved on and continued killing targets, hopefully not leaving another one at 1, and then you'll just loop back to it at some point when you get a cluster near it, and then you can just quickly get rid of it.
This is also what I do, yeah.
Yeah, don't loop back immediately as you see the 1 HP target. I know Lucan does that sometimes.
Because that's a really harsh direction change. It'll spike your tension really heavily. It's a lot to recover from.
Yeah.
I feel like it's better to, yeah, leave it loop back around. There are 4 other targets here that you can, you know, get to in the meantime.
And yeah, even if it's just a singular target, like you did move on, you killed this one, and then you tried to go back for it there. Not a really wise pathing, because it's just a completely like orthogonal movement. And you then, because this is a jarring miss, that you didn't kill this when you went back to it, so you went to your next target, and then you didn't recover from that like shakiness, so you left this one at 1. For me, this would have been just an instant reset. Yeah, that plays out several times. This is, what was it, the second time that I saw it, leaving the exact scenario where you leave at 1, you kill another one, you try to go back to it, you miss, and then you yeah, leave another one.
I think getting better at recovering from misses, if your goal is to like push this to Nova, I feel like that will probably do most of the work for you.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you know, we can always say like, yeah, work on initial flick accuracy and whatnot, but it's kind of a given when pushing this scenario.
What was I gonna pick on? One more thing I was gonna pick on here.
Micros?
I was gonna say padding.
Like those kind of...
Because like with target switching, it's best to like tend yourself towards like as many clusters as possible, and with this much time remaining, I know you probably have a sense of how much time you have remaining. Go for the cluster. I don't know why we're going over here. Like, this is a much easier way to path, and then if you go over here, you're leaving yourself in a position to make a really wide flick. And let's see what happens after this. Yeah, you did it fine. It's just be conscious of that, because that's what makes it to Nova, and Nova Plus, of course.
The reactions to big movements look kind of exaggerated to me.
The biggest help that I had with this on Air Voltaic, this was like the main bot that was holding me back. So all I did was like, okay, Clover, how did bot 4? And he said to treat the bot and every strafe as a long strafe. And the reason that unlocked something for me is because this bot tends to juke you, so it will have its tending bias to go to the right. Let's say it's going to the right here, and what it will do is that it will either stop its motion here, or it will like make a tiny movement to the left, but in reality it's still going to the right. So the key with the reading of this target is to find that bias, that movement bias. And it's also why it's so useful for games. Like, I love this scenario for games, because people who know how to strafe will they'll have a bias or a direction that they're tending towards, and they'll stick to that, but they'll try to throw you off by doing little jukes like this. So the biggest thing is to make sure that every micro you're performing on this is very smooth and doesn't look like a flick. So now I know that...
this is one thing I really tried to pick up from Clover, is how he approaches and reads this bot. Because like he was undisputed best at it, and I really wanted to try and like capture some of that power.
I know that to some it might look like he's like really fast and flicking, but that's not the case. Like, I've seen Clover when he's like flicking. He's not really reaching those speeds. And you can see
God-tier read on that, like, triple fake out as it's going left. Like, that is so fast.
Yeah, he just knows the bot. That's exactly what it's gonna do. But you can see how, like, this whole time tends to the left, and those little jumps that he does is when the bot tries to juke you. And
I think that's what this person who sent in the VOD review, they react very strongly to those, which then makes them react strongly to, like, get back to the bot's initial, like, bias direction. If that makes any sense.
Let me go back to it. What happens when... Exactly what Visco said, like, exactly what happens when you take a stronger or wide micro to those motions is it compounds. So if you spike your tension to adjust to a motion that the bot is juking you with, so what happens here? He's going to the right. He'll jump up, try to juke you, and if you react to that the same way, like with a really wide adjustment to follow it, by the time you have to react to the fact that he's not going to swap directions, you have like it looks like this. You have a really wide adjustment to make, and you're just like causing yourself to traverse more distance than you need to.
This is why I like this scenario, by the way. Because, you know, people move with directional biases too, and they will throw in little strafes to throw you off. It's exactly like this.
Yep, and another thing that I'm seeing here is you do react like cleanly to it. You're seeing it, and a lot of times it could be a perception problem. But the problem is you're doing one of two things. You're either stopping. I am seeing you stop when you perceive the juke. You either stop jarringly, or you adjust and like expect that that's a direction change jarringly. When in reality, you should just be like slowing down in those portions, trying to slow down as much as possible, and then continuing. You still need to, or you're still naturally gonna adjust to that, to those jukes. It's just, you can't do it really wide. You can't do it as if it's actually changing direction.
Well, even on direction changes, you shouldn't be adjusting like super harshly.
But yeah, we try to get to as many details as possible, try to help as much as possible, and hopefully you guys are, hopefully you guys appreciate us bringing this back. We plan to do a lot more, and yeah, this was a good stream.